this talk is probably a little bit too long, so I'm just going to truck through it. If we don't have time for a Q&A at the end, I promise I'll stop and you can catch me afterwards. So this is observations of an accidental community manager, or the more optimistic, how to sell games in 2016. My name's Luke. I'm designer and bureaucrat at Rust Limited. So we're based here in LA and in Bristol, England. And we've been making games for another sort of playful media for 6 years now, I think, somewhere in there. So this talk is largely centered on a game that we recently released called Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We launched it at the beginning of April as a HTC Vive launch title, sort of into early access. It's a physicsy sandbox sort of experience with lots of guns, grenades. Not as much cooking yet, but it's coming, I swear. And so the thing about this game is it kind of snuck up on us. So it started out as an experiment, and then we were sort of blogging about it, and it started getting some traction, which was good. And we got invited to be on Steam, and that was wonderful. And then before we could even announce the title, one of our videos went viral. So our community went from like 0 to 160,000 like in 24 hours. Like we sort of thrown into the deep end there. Yeah, I am not what you'd traditionally think of as a community manager. I don't really love people. I don't like talking on the internet. I do it all right. But in this process, as you are when you're a small company, you sort of have to wear a lot of hats. And since I was the one that had all the login information for all our social media accounts, I became the community manager. 6 months later, here we are. So some of this stuff is going to be really sort of basic to anyone who does this professionally full time. Hopefully there'll be some observations and useful stuff there. But you should definitely consider this sort of an outsider perspective. I mean, I wanted to do this talk because I felt like I learned a lot doing this job that I had no training for and it's not what I signed up for, but here we are. So first, before we get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, let's take a look at what the overall games ecosystem looks like in 2016. So it's very sort of quickly caught up to where the music industry sort of has landed and lots of other media industries, with some good and some bad sides to that. So first off, we've got infinite demand for media. If you take a look at Steam, and if you try and do this, actually, it's really informative, try and find the worst possible game you can on Steam. Really, just bottom of the ratings, sift around for it. I'm sure there's some website which might categorize it. There's some real turds that are just, I don't know how they got on the platform. And you look at it, you're like, who would ever pay $1.50 for this? And then you look at the Steam Spy numbers and whatever else, and it's hundreds to thousands of people have played it and downloaded it. Most of them are probably achievement farmers, but some of them seem really compelled by it. So that's the good news is here that if you can do a better job than that, and if you're here, we're assuming you can do a better job than that, you're going to find a niche for your audience, for your game. You're going to be able to find someone who's going to like it and find it compelling and want to pay for it. So that's the good news, that there's this infinite demand for content. Now the bad news. There's also basically an infinite supply. So show of hands, how many people here have a lot of games in your Steam wish list? Yeah. All right, now keep them up if you've played every last one of them. Yeah, that's no one. There's more games coming out, especially now that Steam and other platforms have streamlined their publishing model, their model. It's 1 billion games per month come out, and that's just one storefront. You've got all the other PC storefronts, all the console games, all the mobile games storefronts. All of that, there's more than content that could possibly be consumed by any individual. And so as a result, you've got there's this real challenge of how do you sort of get visibility there. And so when you put both of these together, you're sort of left with this connection issue of there are people who definitely want your game, and you've got this infinite pool of stuff that they might be playing. So how do you just get to the right swath of players to build sort of a sustainable game company and sort of project, get enough people that are interested in playing your game specifically to move forward there. So that's sort of where we are overall. Now, I like to think about this problem sort of in practice as an issue of discovery and emotional resonance. So discovery is sort of what you think of when you hear the word. how do people know about your game? And this is, of course, crucial because they can't buy your game or let alone play it if they don't know it exists. So that's that's the first hurdle. And emotional resonance is getting them to care about it. Like, we've all heard about a lot of games that we're like, oh, cool, that's another thing there, and then never thought about it again. So how do you get someone to care about your game enough to, one, invest in playing it and stuff, which is that's the big hurdle, make the sale. But then past that, keep engaging with it. Like, how do you make it one of the games in their library that they actually did play, as opposed to another one they got when it was on sale sometime? So AAA has a solution for this. They throw lots and lots of money at advertising. And if you can afford to plaster an entire city and every gaming website with billboards and stuff, you can do this. You can just, everyone here has heard about it because it was on every bus in town. And you've now got the shared community because you're all talking about the billboards, if nothing else. And if you've got an 8-figure budget, you can just do that. It works. AAA still does it. Some of us don't have an 8-figure budget to plaster every bus in Los Angeles or every phone booth in New York, I think, is where that one is. So what's left for us? So focusing on community here can drive both of those things. You can drive both discovery and emotional resonance for your game. So let's tackle the emotional resonance side of things. So first off, what you're doing as a company, the product that you're selling is an emotional experience. So this is true of all sort of entertainment media. Buying a game or paying for a movie or whatever it is, it gives you a tool to feel a certain way for a certain amount of time. So this is like, examples of this would be like you watch a sitcom because you want to laugh and have funny. You read a horror novel because you want to be scared. You watch an action movie because you want to feel the adrenaline rush and the car chases and fight scenes. Like, you've got that sort of experience. Games they're the same thing. Like, think about your favorite game and how that makes you feel, right? So sometimes it's like action movie stuff. Like, great, yeah, I did the snowmobile sequence in Call of Modern Man Shoot 4, and it's got the adrenaline pumping, and it's exciting. Other times it's subtler things, like this sort of satisfaction of solving a puzzle or something, or just relaxation. Like, I play this game to go to sleep at night, and that's what you do. And so that's a crucially important thing. And this should all be obvious stuff. I'm assuming all of you who are here making games are already doing this. And I'm assuming for the sake of this talk that you're already doing a great job of building this kind of emotional experience. But the thing is, that emotional experience isn't bounded to your game. It starts like the minute you first hear about that game, and then continues long after you finish playing it. So things that holistic experience might include would be like watching the trailer. How many of you remember watching a game trailer at some point? You're like, and you decide if you want to, I remember having long conversations about trailers and stuff. So like going online and comparing notes on strategy, chatting in multiplayer lobbies, watching Let's Plays or streamers, making GIFs and image macros, cosplay. These are all things that are sort of part of this macro experience of your game, and that contribute a lot. There's lots of people that I played the game for a little bit, and mostly I like to hang out in that community. So community management, in a holistic way, is about building out all of the rest of that. Like, we're assuming you're doing a good job putting your game experience together, and this is about sort of rounding out all of the rest of that experience. So importantly here, one thing that's like maybe the most important about this for our purposes is that people want to bring their friends with them. How many people here have heard of a game called Minecraft? How many people have bought and played a game called Minecraft? That's okay. How many of you have watched somebody play Minecraft before you bought it? A friend, a streamer, somebody else. So Minecraft's early marketing wasn't exactly the paragon of perfection, but looking at the way that early growth is, that's the platonic ideal for organic growth. Like, a couple of people found it, and they're like, okay, great, this is cool, let me show you. I remember, sitting in Anton's living room, watching him play it, and be like, yep, I'm gonna buy that. next week. That's what I'm gonna. That's 500 hours of Minecraft later. Here we are. Like that's what you're aiming for in the best case scenario. So how can you build a game that? And I think they kind of stumbled into it. But how can you design a game that's going to be conducive to that kind of sort of exposure there? So you've got both this resonance of making people care about it, and then like, well, if they show their friends, that's a pretty strong endorsement there. So before we get into how do you build community, we should probably figure out what we mean when we say community. So community isn't just a bunch of people, right? It is that also, but it's also how those people interact with each other, how they, like their communication, their social structure, all of that stuff. In short, community is a bunch of people plus the culture of that bunch of people. And the getting people in the door is only sort of half the battle. Like letting them know about the game, getting them to sort of poke around on your forums or your social media accounts or whatnot, that's important, and that's the sort of the front end of the discovery part of the process. But if you're taking community seriously, you need to look at that whole sort of ecosystem. Like look at, well, what happens once they get there? Is this a welcoming community? Is this a place they're going to want to spend time? Is this a place where they're going to want to invest their energies into this? So community or culture has to be built. If you want a welcoming community that your players will continue to engage with, you have to build that into the culture. And it can be really tempting to just sort of abdicate this, to say, you know what? Like, I've got a game to finish building here. Like, these people can talk on the internet all they want, see if I care. But when if you do that, what you're saying is, one, that you don't value the community and their energies that they're putting in there. And two, you're setting up a culture where what people say doesn't really have an impact. They're not valued by you, and they're not valued by the rest of the community. Sort of, in short, that ends up looking like 4chan, the worst place on the internet. And no one wants that. Like, I mean, and that can happen. Like, that's just, well, we took all the rules away. You can post whatever you want. We don't care. And that's sort of where it lands. And cool stuff happens there too, I suppose. I try not to spend any time there, but that's sort of the worst case scenario. So how can you build a safer, more productive space? So for a small developer, especially working on your first title, one of the best tools to start building out your online community is on sort of the back of an existing community. So we sort of call this the launch pad of figuring out what of these existing communities you want to sort of start your work in and build up this inertia. So this could be Reddit or TigSource or NeoGAF or YouTube or Twitch. There's all sorts of these existing online communities that are sort of built to be this launchpad platform. Now, each one of these is going to have their own cultures sort of pre-existing. So if you're not a regular user of the community you're looking at, you should get to at least lurk, because it's really easy to sort of run afoul of those. And we'll talk a little more about that later. But start asking questions as you're digging into this, like what sort of people post there? Like what's your audience like? What do they post? How often do they post? What's the dialogue look like? Is there an expected investment as you, the poster, there? Are you allowed to post your own stuff, or is that against the rules? And if you could do that, one, it just makes all the operations down the road easier, but it also gives you a pretty good view of what you want to do. So in our case, because we were doing a Vive launch title, there was a real good concentration of all of those users, of the people who were really interested in that technology, the people who were going to buy it, the people who already had it, on Reddit. So our Vive subreddit was where we sort of focused, and we asked the mods, like, is this okay if we post our stuff? And they were like, yep, that's great. So we started posting these devlogs, and we started posting them before the hardware was out. So we had this like frothing horde of people who were like, I can't wait for this to happen, and we're sort of soaking up every shred of content that they could possibly get. And that was fantastic. Like, we got a lot of early engagement there. I think it was really a right place at the right time thing. And then eventually, so what our process was like, Anton would do a dev video, we'd post it to Reddit, and then we'd start answering and engaging on both of those platforms as much as possible. Over time, some of the other users that weren't us created a whole other subreddit that's all just H3 content, which is really cool. We were really flattered. And now we post a lot of stuff there. We also, once we launched, we're in the Steam forum. So we picked out which of those places that we really wanted to spend our energies. So the next step is to set your standards here. So every community has standards of behavior. Things that are either codified or not, that are informal ways of interacting with each other. So, that's the paying attention before you enter a community, and then establishing that. So an example here is pretty early on. Ben Kuchera from Polygon did an op-ed piece for H3. So a video piece, just an editorial. It wasn't a review or anything like that. And everyone on our team had seen it, and like, oh yeah, that looks cool. And we sort of follow him on Twitter, so we do pretty early on. Well, one of our fans sort of saw that, and they didn't like it. They're like, oh, look at this wimp, and they sort of posted it up to the Steam forums. And that was, by the time we saw it, people were already started to pile on there. It went from look at this wimp to let's hate on this guy for having different opinions than we did. And so it was already starting to sort of spiral there. And so we made the conscious decision, knowing that our community includes lots of gun enthusiasts. There's a spectrum of people in that community that we were attracting that had some pretty noxious views. And so we needed to set the standards very early on what's okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about, how you can talk about it, and how we're not going to let you talk about it. And luckily, this happened on our Steam forums. So where we have we can just delete posts, and we had godlike powers in that particular venue. So that was really lucky in that case. So what we did was I jumped in as the bad cop, and I publicly shamed him. Listen to one of the people, wishing death on this guy by gun accident because he has a different opinion on a video game than you do is not cool. And really just laid into him. And then Anton got to hop on and play the good cop and sort of gave a very positive critique of the video and reminded everyone of the positive ways that we can critique this without being jerks or being hostile or toxic. And the crazy thing was, when we did that, we set those standards of this isn't okay, that all of the people who were posting, and these were sort of these really angry posts, they all stuck around and came back, and they moderated their position. They walked back what they were saying there too. Not apologizing, but just moving back into reasonable human being territory as opposed to slobbering internet rando. And then after that point, everything sort of the tone was so much better. We sort of established this isn't the sort of place where you can just go and hate on somebody for no reason. We're going to be respectful, and this is an issue of how our community is presented to the outside world. So that was an example of really setting our standards. And we had given the contentious nature of our subject matter, we thought about that really strongly early on, and that paid off in spades. So the next step is to know your super users and content producers. So Jeff Atwood, he's the guy behind Stack Overflow and Discourse and a bunch of stuff, has written about this notion of super users. So these are users that, in short, they read everything that comes through. They know everything that's going on in your community, and every successful online community has these people. And they're important for two reasons. First off, for knowledge transfer. So our game doesn't yet have a tutorial. There's an intro video, which is 40 minutes long. I mean, it's a hard game. It's not terribly friendly to an intro user. And so in our case, we had to spend a lot of time communicating how that works. And so having users who knew all of that information that could jump in when a new user sort of dipped their toes in and said, hey, how do you get the magazine out of this gun here? It doesn't seem to work. And so a user would then jump in and just answer the question, or link to a post where we explain it, or point in the YouTube video. And so that makes that whole community that much more valuable to everyone involved. Oh, if I have a question, I can go there and I can answer it. So at the beginning of the process, you need to be your super users. For months and months, I spent every morning, I'm like, okay, answer every Steam post. Go through, if there's good questions on YouTube or elsewhere, answer those too. You go through all of that stuff. And then over time, I remember getting to a point where I would come across a post, and there'd be the question, and somebody would answer. And I realized that this long written out answer was them quoting me, actually. And I'd forgotten that I had written that before, but they were using the tools I had given them to go forward there. So we've also got the content producers. So this is crucial. We've got users in our community who spend what must be hours and hours and hours every week putting together animated GIFs, goofy videos. We've got streamers. We've got on Twitch and on YouTube. And they're producing this content, which is frankly hilarious. Like we've got a whole Slack channel. It's just sending links back and forth to the team. And just see this? This is hilarious. And so we've been to the front page of Reddit, like the top of the front page of Reddit, 4 or 5 times over the course of the 6 months. Only one of those has been for any content we produced. All of the rest of those have been somebody made a goofy GIF about trying to reload a grenade launcher. And then it went viral, and we've got to the front of the page. So that's media that we, maybe if we had enough time, if we weren't busy making a video game, we could produce. But we really had to lean on the community for that. And so the best way to foster these people, both groups, is to signal boost them. So when you see somebody doing something good on the super user camp there, they answer these questions, the bare minimum, give them an upvote. Like, yep, that's good. The internet points matter to some people, and that's good. Giving them a shout out of like, great, yeah, what so-and-so said here. And then the other little detail is this. And then so they know that you're reading and you're appreciating that. On the content producer side, just signal boost it through other channels. I also run the H3 Twitter account, and I'm like, good, that's awesome. Tweet it out there and get a lot of likes there, and sort of give the appropriate credit where it's due. But that gives those people incentive to keep going and to keep engaging, and it provides all your other your less engaged users in the community with stuff to look at every week of more goofy GIFs. Cool. Yeah, and keep communicating. So in this case, being regular and just moving forward as you go, being transparent as much as you can is crucial here. So the example here being, this was somebody posted this kind of angry sounding post about the floor height in this update that we did. So then Anton hops in there. Oh, I'll quick patch a button to the starting scene. Give me 20 minutes. You guys are amazing. I honestly wasn't expecting a reply from the devs, especially not 2 minutes after posting. We posted it. We just sit on Reddit for a while. And then like an hour later, the update was up. And the important thing here isn't that you push updates ridiculously fast, which we did here. The important thing is actually the opposite. We had won this person over an hour before we gave them the feature that they wanted by communicating to them. We said, oh, yeah, we hear you, and we're going to do something about that. Most of the time, we can't just push the update. A lot of times, we can't ever push the update. That's just a bad idea, and here's why. We've thought about it. This is our life. But if you're able to communicate that, or we can't do it till next month, or we can't do it till whenever, if you communicate it to them, they feel like they've been heard. They know that that their contribution wasn't wasted, their time wasn't wasted, and so you can actually get a lot of mileage telling them no if you do it the right way. So, and this is sort of some next level stuff here on how to really push this forward. So first off, start early. We didn't do this quite early enough. We had 160,000 YouTube video views that didn't have our game's name in it. And we're like, oh no, was this our chance? Did we, there was a bit of panic there, but we stuck to it, and whenever you start, it's gonna feel like you're playing catch up. But that's, the earlier you can plan, the better, the more you can have there, and that should be a little more flexible with how you respond to stuff. Also, working this into your design process is, thinking about these features in this process as you design the game makes things way easier. So too, social can take many forms. So this could be multiplayer. This could be shareable content. So think about how much your players are able to share stuff. Can you take screenshots? Is this a very streamable game? Is there multiplayer? Is there matchmaking? Can you spectate games? All of these things that make the game more shareable. So the more you can include there, the better. A little aside here, this is the closest thing we have to a character in the game. It's a tippy toy, little plastic toy with a picture of a lemon on it that screams when you tip it. And we still have fan art. Write about Jerry the Lemon and include it in their videos. That's not a good character, but it's still fans get behind it. If you have a character-driven game, think about that. If you can have people cosplaying your game at festivals and stuff too, that's fantastic. That's a way that they can engage, and that takes a lot of time and energy. So think about ways that you can do that. I don't have a lot of, like I said, that's the closest thing that we have to a character in a lot of cases. So, so we're in early access here, so the feedback and iteration is crucial. So here we're pushing out features and we're getting feedback and we're iterating on those. Sometimes stuff goes in, sometimes stuff comes out. But those are really, that's where a lot of the value comes for us. And finally, like what's the next game? There's a question mark here because we haven't figured this out. But how do we take the community that we've got for this one and transition it into the next one? So if you've got good ideas on that, come find me afterwards. So to go through the couple of cautionary notes here towards the end. So one, every game is different. The stuff that worked for us isn't necessarily going to work for you. The only thing I can do is encourage you to experiment, see what works. OK, if we add the Twitch integration, well, is that going to help? Is this a real streamable game? Maybe not. What if we have an automatic screenshot mode or something? Okay, like, what can we do that will make this game more shareable, that will feed the community with the features they need? Experiment. Everyone's human. So that's like, you're dealing with internet characters most of the time, and that's a really dehumanizing sort of way to look at stuff. And if you can, you're gonna have a moment where somebody's like, great, when are you gonna add feature X? And you think to yourself, like, I have spent 3 or 4 hours this week talking about if or when we're gonna add feature X. And you start having this angry response of, well, if you, dear internet rando, if you had spent 45 blasted seconds reading anything else about this damn game, you'd know how stupid your question, and then you delete it and you're like, well, this person is probably actually just so excited. Like they had seen nothing else about your game. And they're like, look at this YouTube video, this is awesome. I wonder if they're gonna add machine guns or zombies, that'll be good. And if you can treat that person like a human, and you can really let them, respect their time and whatnot, that's the way to turn those really excited people into your dedicated diehard fans. And it's exhausting. It's really terrible to do. Which brings to the second point. You are also a human. If you're able to let some of that through in your communications, they're gonna respect that. Like if you can see the human in them, you treat them better. If they can see the human in you, they will treat you better. So what they're looking for is authentic communication. Like this doesn't need to be anything crazy, but like in our case, the community got a lot nicer when Anton's face started appearing in the devlog videos. They're like, oh, great, it's a person, they're really there. And when he's like a big stretch, he looked tired, and they could tell that one, and they were nicer. Like, great, you should take a break. Like, this is fantastic. Like, we were getting those kind of wonderful responses. Not everyone's going to be comfortable putting their face up there like that, but admit your mistakes. Talk about what you're trying to do. Talk about your failures in that way. And then the second side of this is make sure you've got a support network outside of this community. You're spending all this time, energy pushing your game. If something goes wrong or you're in a bad spot, that's not where you want to go for your support structure. So have, friends, family, the boyfriend you can talk to, roommates, someone that you can go outside of this and get this sort of recharge you need. That way you're not like totally dependent on this when something goes wrong. Know your limits. You can't target every channel. You can't hit every social network. You can't hit every sort of pattern, every possible place that might want your attention. So in our case, we were going to do a mailing list and a blog and some other stuff too. And by the time we got to the end of the weekly updates, I'm like, there is no way any of us are getting that content together ever. Like we never posted to the blog, the mailing list, we just deleted it and kind of removed it from the website. We're like, I guess we're not doing that. And that was the right decision. That let us sort of spend that time, energy in the places where we were able to in an efficient fashion. Find good tools. So I've got a list of the ones that I use here. TweetDeck or the like, to manage, I run 5 Twitter accounts right now, so that's the built-in one. There are other sort of paid tools which are really great. Promoter, so this handles press mentions and key management. So like when streamers want keys and stuff, you can be really well organized and have a whole structure for it. Press kit to get information out. So we've got like, if a streamer wants to have official logos and everything in their stream, we can do that. We can communicate a lot of stuff. The Reddit enhancement suite, like I don't love Reddit. This is a browser plugin that made me not hate Reddit. So that was like, turned you sort of into a power user there too. pay attention to these. If you're using some other network, look at what the power users use, reach out to them, find out. If it saves you 1 minute per post, and this is your full-time job, that's like money in the bank if you can be a little more efficient there. And diversify. So this was the last point. Just last week, we pushed this big Halloween update, and we pushed another big Halloween update, and then Reddit banned Anton's account. That was a bad afternoon. So I'm flying in from London, and we've got this crisis moment. And we got it sorted out in the end. All the accounts got unbanned and everything else too. But had we not, the things we did well were we were communicating across 4 or 5 sort of official Reddit accounts. So there was still like an official presence there, even though he couldn't post. So we were like, OK, great. Here's what's happening. We communicate to the fan, to the other admins, all that stuff that we were able to sort of to continue there too. We also had other channels. So there was YouTube, and there was Twitter, and there was other stuff that we could also communicate through the Steam forums that way. But had we not done all that, had that one Reddit account been our entire sort of pipeline to our community, that would have been a disaster. We had no way to talk to them. We'd spin up another account, and that's somebody faking. That could really derail our project in a big way. So think about what channels you're using. Make sure you've got sort of a spread of them, and know what to do if one of your accounts gets banned or something. So in conclusion, everyone on your team has to be a community manager. If you're selling to the public, you have to be a public figure, and there's no sort of ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is just sort of the way things work now. But if you can do that and you can work it in from the beginning, one, it gives you wonderful insight into what your community likes, more than any amount of play testing could ever give you. If you've got 10,000 people, you'll find a bug. There's a community management role for everyone on your team there. And if you spread it out, it's a little less tedious for everyone. So that's what I got for you. This is basic stuff. I'm sure I forgot some things. I'm still learning in this process, so I'd love for you to reach out. My personal stuff there, the Rust account in our website. You can find out more about hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades at hotdogshorseshoesandhandgrenades.us or h3vr.com. We never get to use the long URL because it's ridiculous, but it works. Reach out or catch me afterwards, and I'd love to talk more about this stuff. Thanks.